Well, I'd trimmed the whole allotment the other day, got all the long stuff down, and today I'm just going over the easy stuff with the lawnmower. And of course it's generating lots of fairly good clippings, and I got a good use for this time. It's going to go on my raspberry cane area and just act as a mulch to keep the weeds down. I'll show you. So I've already weeded this once and got rid of the worst. Now I just need to do a once over and get rid of anything that I didn't manage to wallop the last time. And then I'm going to put that clippings on top, and that will hopefully serve as a good barrier for new weed growth over the rest of the summer. And then I'll probably use some of my compost on this in the winter, given that I've got enough of it once I've used it elsewhere on the beds. So we'll see. But this is very easy weeding, so I'll get on and do that, and then we'll spread those clippings over the top. Had a few spots of rain then, but to be honest, that was welcome. Okay, the lawns are finished. I've cut all the grass I'm going to cut for a while anyway, and I'm just going to spread this now, just about enough really to go all the way around these raspberries and block the light out from the soil. That's the plan. So each time now when I cut the lawn, if I find that there's any bits that have got bare and we've got some weed growth, then I'll work on it and add a bit more clippings, I think, and so on and so forth as the season goes on. I hope that this will have overcome the strong weed growth that I was experiencing. So fingers crossed, eh? Okay, I'll get on and cover this over now. Have a quick look into the growing zone. Wow, we've got plenty of trusses forming on these tomatoes. This is the super sweets, and it looks like we've got trusses on pretty much all the tomato plants now, not the Roma, but on the Latar, and down in the ones in the bed again, yes, and there's some forming there. So pretty much flowers on all tomatoes bar the Roma. That's good news. That probably means I need to start doing a little bit of feeding now, so I need to take that into account. My lobelia, it struggled to get to any size, but it's starting to move on now, which is nice. And the basil's overflowing the pots. That's always lovely to see. And we've got things to get out here. This is next on my agenda, potting on my house tomatoes, because they do benefit from a bigger sized pot a couple of times. Great to see the parsnips developing their first leaves there, and it won't be long before I start clipping out the ones I don't want to keep. So that's going well. All my squash and pumpkin are really getting going now, but to be honest, if you look at the temperatures last night, 3.6 degrees, that's just too cold. So I'm just going to hang in there. Hopefully we'll get around that cold spell and move on. Well, I've got cabbages and kale to go out. This is sprout, so I need to think about that. And just look at those strawberries. They are virtually ready to pick. I could just see the palest bit there, which once that gets red, we'll be having a nice strawberries and cream moment, which would be wonderful. These a little bit less prolific, but all now colouring up well. And the carrots starting to develop their first leaves. So again, I'm approaching that point where I'm going to be just doing a quick weed over and clipping out carrots that I don't want to keep, so that we get all the focus into a single carrot in each station. So that's good news. My cut and come again lettuce is getting to the point where I'll soon be taking it over the house and utilising it. Otherwise, everything's looking well, which is great to see. So I think these are next. Okay, 3 medium pots for these house tomato, and everything's going to be just dandy for these because they produce so much tomatoes for me. These tiny little cherry ones, which are so succulent. I like to take great care of them. So I'm going to use compost that's been in the polytunnel, so it's the same temperature, and I'm going to use water to water it that's been in the polytunnel, so everything is not going to give them a shock. That's the plan. And I'm just going to take one of these out and see what the roots are looking like. There we are. So not exactly full yet, but they will benefit from that new size pot and hopefully grow on. These sort of cherry tomatoes, they're dwarf, they never get particularly big, but I like to try and get them as big as they can because that gives me the most fruit. Okay, I'll open that bag and we'll get going. Gave everything a pretty good water too, and it's getting quite warm in here today. It's been as high as 44 degrees, even though it's cooler outside. So it's important just to keep an eye on everything. But there they are in their pots, ready for the next growing on stage. And they too have got little trusses on them already. So I really am heading into the tomato feeding time. Okay, outside I've got one job I want to get finished before I wrap it up today. So this bed I weeded, what, probably a month or so ago. It's a no dig bed, and that's what happens if you leave it. And you can see that it's got a fair amount of weed growth on it, but I have to say there's nothing here that's difficult. So even the grass comes up simply. Here we've got a bit of stinging nettle, important to get the roots out. And here we've got the age-old mare's tail. But you can see that it really is a very simple task to weed it because, well, this is so soft. So although it's a fallacy that no dig means that you're not going to have weeds, you are. If you keep putting compost on top, you'll prevent most of them. And if you do leave it and you do get weeds, then the weeding job is relatively simple, in my personal opinion. So I think it's a virtue of no dig that's perhaps a bit of an unsung hero, how easy it is to weed. Okay, I'll get on and get the rest of these out. Should only be a couple of minutes, and then this bed I'll be ready for something to plant. Right, time to plant. So in here, I'm going to put no more than 8 of these well-developed celeriac plants. And I know I've always grown celeriac, and space equals size when it comes to growing them. So I'm really anxious to give them as much space as I possibly can. As I've said before, having 8 really well-developed celeriac is a lot better than a whole bunch of small ones, because the small ones just don't give you enough to eat once you've taken off the top and the bottom. So these have been in the polytunnel probably longer than most people would keep them, I think, but I think that's going to give me a better end result. So in they go, this year's celeriac, and hopefully at the end of the season I'll be able to show you some fairly sizable roots that can go into stews and other lovely vegetable meals. And one subscriber recently who said that they were growing them use the leaves in stews as well. So I'm thinking if I can keep the leaves in good condition, I might give that a go as well, because they're obviously part of the celeriac or celery family, and as we know, the leaves of celery are very tasty indeed. So I'm hoping that I can replicate that subscriber's attempts to grow leaves that you can put in stews. So I'll get on and put the rest of these in and we'll see how they go. Fingers crossed. Right, last job of the day, and I've been meaning to do this one time and again, and of course it's my experimental white rot bed with garlic in it, and the plan is to make sure I did it as the last job on the plot for the day, because as you may well remember if you watch my channel, I put chopped up infested onions into this bed to try and get the white rot to develop early, mature and disappear, and then grow garlic in it with the hope that it wouldn't be infested with white rot. So I need to weed this, and so I'll go through now very carefully. I'm using separate tools, a different pot, and these gloves will be finished with when I've done this weeding. I can go home and wash them. I'm going to take the nets off, weed it, and then we'll take a look at what's happening in here. Okay, so I brought you down for a close look. Well, for sure, these plants have got rust, and rust tends to occur on this plot quite a lot on garlic, and you could say that it's the result of a stressed plant, but there's no falling over of these plants. I've got one that looks like it's leaning, but I think it's probably suffered from having the net pushing over. So I'm going to take one of these up in the interest of science and just see whether we've managed to grow a crop of garlic without white rot, even though the bed had white rot in it before, for sure. So let's take this fella here. I've picked one randomly. I'm going down pretty deep. Okay. Now I think these have got a bit more developing to do, but that is a perfectly healthy bulb. I can't see any examples of the white sort of rotting outer casing that you see with white rot. Now I'm not going to say all of them are like this, but that's a very good start. So I'm just going to let those carry on a bit longer, probably another 3 or 4 weeks, and I'll dry this one and see what happens. So I think that's probably so far a success. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, why not like and subscribe, and you can get my updates every Wednesday and every Sunday at 8 PM. Good times.